May the odds be ever in your favor.
This is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah. Another myth bites the dust.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Micah, and with me in person is Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Man, I'm just up here in Alaska living the dream, looking at the beautiful view of the mountain range here outside of your house. So thanks for having me up here.
It's so great. And you did bring up some books, which are fantastic. So directly from it. So we're shilling those out in a very positive way. So
yeah, we for sure are. For those of you who read the first edition, you know that Micah had a favorite page. Now he has two, probably three favorite pages. I put you in a couple other times. So yes, special thanks to everybody who gave so many great reviews, and really excited for the book.
Boy, and I'll throw this one out there as well. If you can find my favorite page in the book and send it in and highlight what that page is, that's good for at least 1 free hour of Jarvis's time. I'm happy to volunteer that.
That's right. That's right. If you find my cell phone number in the book, call it.
It's fantastic. Well, we wanted to talk about today a podcast, and we're going to get together for team training tomorrow, which is going to be fantastic. Yep. We got some exciting things happening with our practices. We're yet to disclose that just out there, but we got some exciting things in how we're leveraging it going forward. But one of the things we're really doing is focusing on a team training aspect of it. One of the goals that I have for this year is I need to become the leader I need to be in 10 years. I need to be that leader now. And one of that is being a better trainer for my team.
Yeah, and something we've talked about on this podcast often is that everything matters. It occurred to us this morning as we were planning out this team training that we didn't necessarily talk about why everything matters. Now, I know those of you listening on the just listening, right? And in your mind, you're picturing the two most beautiful, handsome men you've ever seen in your life. Those of you who know us and who have seen us or are watching the YouTube, you know that is not the case. As bad as it seems now, it was so much worse before. And this goes to our younger advisors who are listening. When you don't look like a mature advisor with a lot of experience, but even if you do, you need to do everything you possibly can to stack the odds in your favor to create an experience that provides credibility and confidence to the client or the prospective client.
Yeah, that is 100% the case. Is how am I stacking the odds inside this? Now, some people will look at this in a very negative way, Jarvis, and they're going to say, hey, you're trying to manipulate things. And so again, let's jump into this, right? Manipulating is when I'm trying to use either some type of means to deceive, to deceive someone else, right? That is manipulation. Effective communication is understanding body language, understanding how to talk to someone, understanding what things I need to bring up and when I need to bring them up in conversation. That's effective communication, which if you're married, if you have kids, if you wish to be in a society and not a hermit, you should have effective communication.
Yeah, and I always try to translate things back to my experience as a consumer in other places. So if I go to a restaurant and there is filth all over the floor, does that impact my food? Well, no, not in the literal sense, but it certainly impacts my experience. What if they bring it out on a styrofoam plate? Does that change the food? No, it doesn't, but it sure changes the quality, right? We'd love to joke about wine, right? What's the joke about wine? Oh, did you get a box of wine? Does the container affect the wine? It does not literally affect the wine, but it affects the experience of it. And a lot of what we're doing, especially around money, is about the experience, right? How confident am I in the experience?
All right, so funny. Did you see the spoof that Payless did recently?
No, like Payless shoes?
Payless shoes.
Yeah, no.
So
I didn't know they're still in business.
Yeah, I know, right? So Payless shoes, they went to a high-end place in LA and they changed their name, but they did all Payless shoes. But then instead of charging $30 for the shoes, they charged like $700 for the shoes. And they invited a lot of designers to come in. But they completely changed the way it wasn't lined up, right? Versus now I haven't been in, I don't know when the last time I was in Payless, but I imagine it's still the same thing that you have rows and rows and shoe boxes and you go through and try to find yours, right? They eliminated all of that. They had only select shoes out. They put it in a separate area. They had a high-end salesperson that was there, and they brought in all these designers, and these designers were like, oh my gosh, these are going to be amazing. They're going to be great. We're going to get so many things. And so many people liked them. I said influencers, not designers, my apology. But so many people liked them that at the very end of it, they let them in the gag that this was Payless. And they're like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Everything counts. Right? If you show up and you're in a warehouse setting, people don't want to pay designer prices. If you're in a boutique setting with great sales experiences, great communication, people want to pay boutique prices. So they did it to show that their shoes are great quality no matter what. And I think the other lesson here is context matters.
It does. And when push comes to shove, when the market is down 20%, 40%, 50%, when the client is ready to make one of the great investing mistakes, the amount of confidence you've created will make all the difference in the world. And that's where, again, we separate out like, hey, are you trying to game the system? I suppose in a way you could frame it that way, but what I'm trying to set up in my heart of hearts is I need to make sure the client doesn't panic when they're prone to panic. And anything I can do to put that in my favor, I'm going to do those things.
And that's the client's favor. Anything I can do to put that in the client's favor.
Thank you.
Keeping them invested in the long term is in their favor, just for all of a known history. But whatever, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, just based on history. So these are really important things that we have to do. So one, get out of your own head trash and limitations you have, and say, how do we do this?
Hey, one last piece of this, Micah, is I often hear advisors complain and they say, well, my client, the prospective client, they were going to work with me, but the insurance sales guy or the annuity sales guy, which by the way, I'm not throwing those under the bus, I'm just repeating this. Some guy sold him an indexed annuity that was terrible. Yeah, they were able to do that because they provided such a good experience that the client was willing to look past that this terrible idea, right? So you say, oh, it doesn't really matter. Look at it from that lens. If you don't provide a good experience to this prospect, they're likely going to end up with some charlatan who gives them a good experience and a terrible advice. So if you in your heart of hearts believe you're providing good advice, you better provide a good experience or it's for naught.
Were you on my call on Monday when I was actually talking to an advisor about that? Because I don't think you were on the call.
No, I was not on the call.
It was Wednesday. It was Wednesday. I got the call just the other day, and I was chatting with an advisor on our team, and he got very frustrated because he was meeting with a prospect that was just sold a crap ton of annuities.
Sure.
And they don't appear to be the best quality of annuities, and he was getting really upset. I was like, "Why are you upset?" He's like, "I can't believe someone would do this." I was like, "You're missing the better lesson here."
Yes.
You weren't part of the conversation, so be really quick in judging on why this was a bad call, right? You're only going to look at it when you're playing armchair quarterback.
Yes.
What was the context there? I don't know, right? I'd want to be very curious and ask a lot of great questions, but maybe this person, they don't need the money, but maybe they're so concerned about the market that they cannot take the statement risk. So what I define as statement risk is market volatility, right? It goes up and it goes down, right? You have a traditional CD, it does not go up and down in value. It only goes up over time, right? The client is not taking statement risk, the volatility in the market.
I like that phrase, statement risk. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I try to explain it to clients a lot. Is just saying, look, the risk is one thing. The statement risk is you panicking because it drops by X amount. It's another reason we use different buckets and different accounts to kind of separate those risk factors out with clients.
I love that. So let's tie this around, Micah, to actionable items, right? So we say, all right, it's important that the client has a good experience, the prospective client. What are some things that come to mind that really can stack the deck in the client's favor, again, not in my favor, in the client's favor for making the best decisions?
Yes, right. And this is where everything counts. We talked about it before. Right now, I really want to focus on kind of running the meeting and kind of what that experience is from a prospect standpoint should look like. But there's other things that come into this list, whether it's how are you shaking the hands? Are your hands cold? Are they warm? Are they clammy? Are they wet? Right? Did you just go to the bathroom and they're not fully dried off? And you've been thinking, oh my gosh, yes, that happens. I've shaken people's hands where they're wet because they just came out of the bathroom, right? It's just weird. And so these are things that I don't want my clients to have that experience, right? If my hands are really cold and a client goes to shake my hands, I'm going to address why my hands are cold. They go say, oh, I'm so sorry, my hands are super cold today.
I just came in from outside, whatever.
Whatever it is, right? But I'm not going to make them think that I'm completely heartless and only have cold blood, right? I want to say something about that. If I shock the client because maybe there's an static electricity and we go to shake hands, it's like, oh, wow, it's a shocking experience to meet you, right? I'm going to have something like that in my repertoire to normalize, to make that event weirdness okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if I border on the side of just OCD on this, but I was in my physical office yesterday before I came here to see you in Anchorage, and I walk in the door and I'm always just hyper aware of everything in the client experience. Are the books on the bookshelf even? Is there dust anywhere? Are the chairs set in the right spot? Have they been banged against the wall? But I walk in and I notice something smells just a hair off, not some atrocious, just something smells a little bit off. And so I start walking around the office and I'm trying to figure, what is that smell? And I realized somebody had not taken the garbage out. So there was a garbage can under someone's desk that had gotten missed and it had lunch in it from last week. So I bagged it up and I was taking it out. And one of our team members said, yeah, I thought I noticed something that smelled funny. Why didn't you do anything about it? Why did you just figured it would go away? Because that's how smells work. It did go away, yeah. But I'm looking, is there anything here, like you said, the handshake, is there anything in the client experience that is going to take away from that experience? And if I can fix it, I'm going to fix it. I cannot fix that my hair has not come back. Like there's just not a fix for that. But I'm going to make sure it's properly groomed, right? There's not some kind of glare off it. So I'm always going to look, what's everything I can do in my power to make this experience as good as possible.
Amen. Right. To make that a positive experience for the client, to help them. So one of the things, and I'm looking over here at our whiteboard, so we're kind of jotting out a lot of this cool stuff. But one of the things that I walk away with, my goal in meeting with a prospect, and I believe this in my heart of hearts, is to change their life. When a prospect comes in and gets to meet with me and we get to go through things, we are going to leave a positive impression. That's it. That is my sole goal, is to help change their lives in a very positive way. My goal is not to get hired. My goal is not to bring on so many assets. My goal is not to charge X amount in fees. My goal is to change their life. Now, a byproduct of that is they're probably going to hire me, but that is my goal. And if at the end of this meeting, we walk away and we say, hey, Mike, it was really nice meeting you. It really helped this information. I'm going to go do everything myself. I'm going to say, man, I wish you nothing but the best of success. And if something changes, call us in the future. And I mean this in my heart of hearts, right? Because my goal is to change their life.
I love this mindset, because then everything that happens in that meeting is giving me an opportunity to change their life, right? So if there's, oh, well, I have this objection. Wow, now I have another opportunity to change their life. Or they misunderstand something, or they're going to make this terrible financial decision, or they've made all good financial decisions. Whatever comes to that table, even if they insult me personally, it all falls under the umbrella for me of, this is my opportunity to change this person's life.
Amen. So again, I'm stacking the deck in my favor, right? The odds in my favor, to make sure we can help with this experience. Now, how is that stacking the deck in my favor? It helps with my head trash. Right? It helps with me being worried about being rejected, or about this conversation not going well, or getting concerned. Like I remember this years and years ago where I was concerned because a client wouldn't hire me, right? What reflection did that have? That I'd be so worried about getting them to say yes in the meetings, I would fail to deliver value, right? I was focused on the wrong thing. I was. So how do I need to change this in my own mindset? Great. My job is to help change their life. I'm going to put everything on the line. I'm going to hold nothing back to really make sure we can do that.
But this hasn't always been the case. You and I talked as we were fleshing this out, because we're training some of our newer advisors, right? Remembering when we would dread having prospect meetings because I didn't know how to deliver value in that meeting. I remember a prospect specifically telling me at the end of my 100-page financial plan presentation, is, Matthew, this seems really nice and you're a really nice guy and I'd love to work with you, but it's really not clear to me what exactly you would do. And he wasn't trying to be rude. It wasn't an objection. He was just sharing. And he did not become a client. And it really kind of rocked my world, but it was kind of looking again and saying, all right, I did not deliver value in the meeting. That's when I really started to understand what value is and what it's not.
When it's thrown in your face that you failed to deliver it is really when we start to learn.
Yeah. And this goes back to our mindset too. When objections come up, I never view them as objections. I don't even like calling them that. It's my opportunity to better understand what this person's thinking.
Yeah, I call them, one of the things that I've said this many times in the podcast, but I always ask, what are your questions and concerns, right? I don't say, what are your objections? What are your questions and concerns? Because I view all of those as concerns that they have, and how do we need to address it? And that's my goal for the meeting. So when we kick the meeting off, right, we'll go through the main intro stuff. We'll skip that. It's a couple minutes of chit chat, or a little bit, how do they hear about us? What's going on? What's happening in Alaska? Something of that nature always kind of comes up. Then from there, I want to transition as appropriately, but as quickly as possible to their questions. This is why they're here. They did not come in to chit chat. They came in to get value, right? So I want to transition to their questions. One, I want to acknowledge the work that they've put in to get ready for this meeting, because we ask for a lot of documents in advance. We ask for a fact finder to be filled out. I want to acknowledge that they put a lot of time and energy in, and thank them for that, which is truly thankful. Then I want to say, set the stage and say, great, have you ever met with a financial advisor before? Right? This is going to give me a lot of good intel,
great
right?
Question.
Because if they have, oh, great, who did you meet with? I met with a State Farm guy, right? A Ameriprise guy, right? Now I start to get some context of information that they received. But generally the answer is no, they haven't met with another financial advisor. This is great. Well, the good news is about meeting with us is this isn't a dentist appointment. You're not going to leave in pain, right? we're good. That little laugh. That's all I'm going for right there. Is, hey, we're going to really look at your situation. My job is to help answer your questions. That's my sole goal for today, is to answer the questions that you have. And then I'm going to thank them again for uploading their information and say, hey, I know you submitted some questions in advance. I have those written down in front of me. I want to make sure I address them. But before we move on to that, what else? What other big questions or concerns do you have that you want to make sure we're addressing today?
The Perfect RA challenges financial advisors to answer the question, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Surround yourself with financial advisors who share your common values and goals towards success. The advisor is you. The time is now. Don't be like most people who fail to take action and achieve their dreams. Go online today at theperfectria.com and decide what type of financial advisor you plan to be.
Yeah, and that's a critical distinction. I saw some industry, we're going to call them armchair advisor, say, hey, you should ask people, do they have any questions? No, that's too easy to say no to. I want this to be open-ended. What questions do you have? And then, Micah, to your point, what else? What else is on your mind? And I see advisors make a mistake here, Micah, where they're mechanical in this.
Oh, great point.
They're mechanicalists. For me, and again, I know this feels cliche, in my heart of hearts, I desperately want to know what concerns are on their mind. Why? Because then I'm going to be most effective. If I want to change their life and we're just doing superficial of, I wanted a second opinion. Cool. What specifically did you want a second opinion? You've obviously done a lot of really good things here, or you wouldn't be sitting in my office. What specifically prompted you to want to come in? And then I really want to know the answer to that question. It's reflected in my voice. It's reflected in my body language. I'm almost not quite a melodramatic level, but I want to make sure my body language really reflects. Like if I'm just sitting back, slouched in my chair like I'm doing right now, that's communicating it different. If I'm really leaning forward and I'm looking in their eyes and I'm looking in their soul and I'm saying, hey, what is it that had you want to come in here today? And then I'm quiet and I've got my pen ready, I'm intently ready to write, and I'm looking at them. That's an entirely different experience than, do you have any questions?
Yes. Very, very, everything counts, right? So I want to go through what those questions are. Then I want to make sure we're stepping back and saying, great, let's go through and review what I call our meeting outline, which is not the agenda. And the little bit of difference and nuances, I already have an agenda down of all the things that I want to cover. Yeah. A meeting outline is when I'm now going to incorporate all of their questions appropriately when they're going to be addressed in our agenda. So that's how I'm merging those two together. So I have all their questions. It says, great. I know you have a question about, how do you maximize your Social Security? I know you have a question about concern on getting the house paid off, about not getting killed in taxes, right? Whatever those questions are. I say, great news is what I'd love to be able to do is first, we're going to start off talking about cash flow because it's the heartbeat of retirement. And that's going to set us up to give you the best answer on how to maximize your Social Security. And in fact, that's going to help us really answer the question on taxes, making sure you don't get killed. Then I want to move in talking about investments. And that's going to answer the question on should we pay our house off or not? And so I'd love to go through the things in this order to make sure I get you the best answer possible. Is that going to be okay with you?
I blew that one time, and this is somewhere where we make this mistake a lot of. The client would then, or prospective client would say, oh, I have this really specific question. And one I had, it was a perfect prospect. This was years ago, one of the best. And they said, hey, it was like right at the end of the year. They said, hey, we're going to get killed in taxes this year because we had so much income. What can you do here? And I thought, I'm going to jump straight in. So I straight jump into this. I jump, here's all these strategies we can do. And they jotted all those down and they said, cool, thank you so much. And then they left and never talked to me again.
Yep.
Because I thought, I need to skip my process. I need to go that. Yes. Had I said, and this is what I do now, like you said, okay, let's fit this into the overall thing to make them aware of all these other issues legitimate issues that they needed to take care of that all got swept under the rug because I let us get distracted by the one question.
Yeah, that's really, really important to think about, right? And again, there's times in client meetings where I get so comfortable with the client, I am tempted to, and I will confess, skip my process. And then it doesn't go the way I needed to. I'm like, dang it, why didn't I just follow the friggin' process, right? Because it works so well, I stop. And so that's just something I have to come back to. And we preach again and again to the team. That's the reason we have our process written out. It says, no, this is the process we need to follow. And guess what? When we follow it, it ends up with a great outcome. And what is that? The client achieves their goals. That's the outcome we're going for.
Yep. Yeah, I love to CrossFit. I know it doesn't show in my physique, but I love to CrossFit. And part of that is I come 30 minutes before class starts and I spend 30 minutes doing warm-up and stretching. And
that's a great idea.
And I think, I should just shortcut this workout I don't need to. But if I do that, that's when I get hurt, right? So anytime we're looking at excellence, there's a process to follow. And it's tempting. Like, let me go straight to the deadlift. I did deadlift last week. Let me go straight to the deadlift. I don't need to warm up. Oh, no, actually, I needed to warm up. Same with our prospect meeting. There's a process to go through and you've got to follow it step by step or it's going to blow up on you.
Right, because you're going to miss very key things that we take for granted, right? Okay, so we go through that process.
Yes.
Next thing that I want to do after we do that meeting outline is I'm going to start talking to them more than likely, again, a prospect, what does retirement mean to them, right? Now, if it's a younger couple, I'm going to say probably less than 50. I generally don't use the retirement word. I generally change it to financial independence, but it's the same questions. I just say financial independence because especially where we're a high income earner, high saver, and they're not quite in that retirement mode, retirement's too far out. But if I say, hey, when do you want to be financially independent? They're like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing, right?
So that's really good for entrepreneurs as well,
Yes.
business owners, people who in their mind, retirement is sitting in a rocking chair and they can't imagine themselves doing this. It goes back to, I want to use terminology that they resonate with. Not to sidebar on this, we had a client recently with tax season, and he had a big tax bill, which we had set money aside for, and he says, oh, I can't believe I owe this boatload of taxes. And Alex, who was responding to the client right away, was going to say something. I says, oh yeah, I know you owe a lot in taxes. No, stop. They said a boatload of taxes.
Yes.
I am going to say a boatload of taxes.
Correct.
And now I'm on the same page. And so again, all of these things make such a difference.
Yeah, the only time I want to not use the client's language is if they're saying the wrong thing.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Hey, I'm going to roll over the TSP. Yep, we're going to help you transfer the TSP, because if you work with TSP, that means two completely different things.
Yeah, it does.
Right? And so, those types of things, I'm going to correct the client language to make sure it gets said correctly. But short of that, I want to use that client language. I want to be able to communicate with them at that same level. It's a great point.
Okay, so you've asked them, right, what brings you in here? What questions do you have? Right. What else is on your mind? What else can I help you with today? What then? And then you outline the process.
Yep. And then I outline the process. Then I ask him, like, talk about retirement. When would you like to retire, or when would you like to be financially independent? Then,
a joke. I'm curious to use this one. I find we use a lot of the same jokes. Whenever I ask them when people want to retire, I say, other than yesterday, when would you like to retire? Right? And it's that same, other than yesterday, when would you like to retire? And it's a stupid joke, but everybody smiles, and it takes some of it's like your dentist joke.
Right.
And I'm like, the dentist trying to leave here in pain. It's a stupid joke. Doesn't matter. It gives them a chuckle. It lightens the mood, and it shows that I'm different than the fear that they had when they came in.
Yep. So I love that.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I'm going to do is, when we're talking about it, let's say they don't know, or it's just somewhere between 62 and 65. This is great. You know what? For planning purposes, one of the things I've learned in my 20 plus years in doing this is it's much easier to plan for the soonest date possible. And it's really easy to extend retirement, but it's really hard to accelerate it. If we plan on 65, then you would change your mind to 62. This could be a problem. So is it okay for today if we talk about 62 as the date you'd like to retire? Right? I want to get their permission. And this is super important, because if I just skip it, that little step in my mind about explaining it, right, then it's like, this guy didn't listen to me. I told him 65. You told me 62 to 65, right? But in their mind, I did not listen. So if I'm going to take any liberties with their information, I'm going to explain why it matters to them. Right? Why does it matter to them? Because if we plan on 65 and you accelerate it, it could blow up your retirement. That's why it matters to them.
Yep.
Right? And I'm going to get their permission. And I'm going to get, yes, fantastic. We'll put 62 just for discussion purpose. We can change our mind anytime, just for today's discussion. Right? Again, I'm trying to lighten it, because sometimes we can get really anchored. I'm going to say, especially guys in this aspect, right? We have a lot of identity wrapped up in our work, and that can be really hard kind of moving into. So if I lighten that mood up a little bit, hey, just for today's discussion, we can change your mind at any time. Just that little bit right there helps take that pressure off.
I want to pull out something you said in passing. You said, in my 20 years of experience. So this is credibility building. What did you say when you had 2 months of experience? Or what do you wish you would have been smart enough to say?
I was going to say, what did I say? 19 years and 8 months ago?
Yeah.
I probably would have said
or
none
what
of
would
that.
you recommend?
What would I recommend saying?
We have listeners all across the spectrum, right? We work with advisors that have been in the industry 40 years, advisors that have been in the industry 4 days. And there's this fear like, hey, if I'm at 4 days, I have no credibility. I need to hide that or try to pivot that.
Boy, not really. I would kind of pivot it a little. I would pivot it definitely and say, hey, in all of our experience in working with clients, we would recommend A, B, and C, right? So I'd leave the years off, and I left the years off for a long time until I'm at 20. And now I kind of throw it out there. Or saying, hey, our firm's helped clients retire for the last 40 years, right? So I can make it a firm aspect of it. I could just say, in our experience, or working with like-minded clients, right? Yeah. So I could use one of those as an easy example.
Yeah, those are great ones. In my experience, our firm is a great one. And even if you say, wow, I'm an independent RA, but I custody at Fidelity. Wow, that's a firm that you're with that's been around doing this a long time. So you always want to be establishing credibility, especially if you look like you just started. Like a lot of my early years of the career, I looked like I had just gotten off my paper route. I even had a prospect ask that one time if I had come from my paper route to this meeting. I still have some scars from that one. They became a great client to this day, actually. But I want to have an answer for that I'm confident in, right? Yes. If I'm hiding things, people know when I'm hiding things. If I can say, wow, some of the advisors I'm mentored by, or I'm mentored by this great team of advisors, and they remind me again and again that people often make this mistake. A great line to use as well.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to go through that, talk about retirement age, then we're going to get into retirement income, right? And one of the things that I like to ask the question of is, how much money do you want to spend in retirement? And I like that because it's an open-ended question and I get to hear different types of answers. Now I get a glimpse into how they're thinking, right? Are they thinking on an annual basis? Are they thinking on a monthly basis? Are they thinking on a per paycheck basis, right? I can start getting these little things. And why does that matter? Because I'm going to respond talking in a like-kind manner. And also I get a glimpse really quickly. Are they talking net versus gross before I bring it up, right? Because then the next thing I'm going to look at is after I ask that question, I got an age now, I got a general income range. Now I got to dial that back down to what are they spending today? And I want to compare those, right? If someone says, hey, I want, $150,000 a year in retirement income, well, this is fantastic. And then I start asking about how much money do they bring home today?
Yeah.
And there's like, well, I'm not really sure. It's like, well, how much money do you bring home like every pay period on your LAS, your leave and earning statement? I said, don't worry, you've just gotten these for the last 30 years. It's usually a little chuckle, that's there. And I'm like, I don't know, about $2,500 a pay period. I said, well, great, that's $5,000, every month. If we add a little bit more because there's 26 pay periods, let's maybe call that $5,500. But you said you wanted to spend $150,000 a year. And what's that, $13,000 a month? So there's a little bit of a difference there. So immediately I start kind of drawing out some of these differences. He's like, oh, well, that's gross because you know what? I still got to pay taxes and I still got to fund my TSP. Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, hey, for today's conversation, is it okay if we just talk in net numbers? And what that means, what money's put in your bank account? Let me worry about taxes and inflation.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot of pieces there. Want to draw out something for our listeners. And by the way, not all of it, most of the best stuff I use in prospect meetings and client meetings came from phrases I heard other successful advisors use. So I love that you said, how much do you want to spend in retirement? This might seem just like a throwaway question, but there's this key, this want to spend. I've now taken all the pressure. Not how much do you need, not how much can you have, not how much retirement income is there, how much do you want to have? There's no wrong answer to the question, how much do you want to have? I've taken all of the pressure off. Yep. Versus if we say like, line item out your budget. Well, now there's a lot of pressure. And now you're judging me on how much I spend on cable TV or whatever the case may be. This is a no pressure question that gives me so much information.
Boy, when you ask that too, if you ask the budget question, right, then the spouse says, ooh, boy, how much is one spending versus the other?
I'm glad you said that, because if you said need and one guy says, oh, we need $5,000 and the spouse says, oh, we need $7,000. Now I've created this conflict. But if he says, I'd want 5 and she says, I'd want 7, cool. I'm glad now we know what your wants are. This is awesome.
Fantastic, right? So I always want to start with those wants, right? Now, why is another reason to start with the wants is because if we don't have to cut back, why even get into that conversation?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, why light that fuse? And so great, we start with the wants, and then I want to move into, in my case, I'd move into federal service because I know how that timeline comes in. But then I would move a little bit more into a retirement income timeline of just saying, great, where's this income going to come from? We want to spend $8,000 a month in retirement. You can't see as well, I'll put my hands off the camera, but I hold my fingers up when they say how much they want to spend. So you spend $8,000 a month in retirement. Great, where is that going to come from? And then I always hold fingers up because then as I'm talking about your pension's going to be $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
You're going to have $2,000 a month from Social Security and then an extra $1,000. So, okay, that gives us $5,000 a month, but we want to spend $8,000. So now we need to figure out where that other $3,000 a month is coming from. And I wave my fingers when I'm talking that $3,000, right? Because I want to bring their attention to it. And I want to make sure now, more than likely they've thought about this in some way, but I want to simplify this as much as possible.
And this ties back to learning styles, right? The visual, the kinesthetic, all of the auditory, right? If I'm just giving them a financial plan on a long piece of paper, unless they're super detail oriented and like that, and they're still going to miss it. I've missed my auditories. I've missed my visuals.
Yep.
And so I want to have that all connected through.
Yeah. So that's really important, right? And then start showing them their gaps, right? Which is what I love about our retirement income timeline.
In an empowering way, right? I'm not saying, hey, you're short $2,000. You screwed this up. Your budget's $4,000 over, whatever this. In an empowering way. That's why I always love to use this line. What is your strategy for bridging that gap? What's your strategy for claiming Social Security? What's your strategy for not getting killed in taxes, right? So I'm opening that in a very gentle way, but I'm making them aware, like that gap. Hey, we got a gap of $3,000. What's your strategy to fix that? It's such a different conversation than we looked at numbers, you're $3,000 short.
And also I'm going to pull out that little comment about the strategy. You should always have that when a client comes to you with one of their problems, right? If a client comes to you and says, hey, look, we got to pay for a second house, or we got to buy XYZ, or my kid has a problem, or, I'm about to get this inheritance, whatever it is, I'm like, great. Well, what was your strategy? What are you guys thinking about in order to take care of that? I'm not leading with an answer. Why? Because more than likely, they're going to have some piece of important information they have not told me that is going to change my answer.
Yeah.
Right? You're laughing, so you get the same thing,
all
right?
the time.
So I always want to ask more questions about what their strategy is. Sometimes they just want to use me as a sounding board and they have a rock solid answer. Right? So it's great. Well, here's the way I would approach thinking about that. Now, I'm not going to tell them exactly what the answer is. Here's the way I would approach thinking about that problem. I want to give them the formula on how to solve that, not the answer. Why? One, I want to help change their lives. If I teach them what the formula is, they can go and apply this. Right? And they can start using this mindset a little bit. Or later when they go sell a property and in our formula, I'm always talking about taxes. They're like, oh, wait, we got to talk to Micah. I know there's a tax thing. They don't need to solve the tax thing, but I want them to know that's a piece of the pie. And then as I give them the formula for it and we walk through it, the answer becomes self-evident. And especially when it's a challenging answer, I'm not the one that has to come up and say, hey, you got to spend $3,000 a month less. We've walked them through. They're like, I think we need to make some changes in our cash flow so that we can retire and have a little bit less spendable income. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some different ways we can make that work.
There's two powerful pieces in there. One is that you are serving as a guide. We all love to have guides in our life. We don't necessarily want someone to carry us, right? So last year we did a rafting trip down the Grand Canyon and we had guides the whole way that made it a phenomenal experience. But when I tell the story, I say, wow, our family, we rafted the Grand Canyon. Now, we didn't pack the supplies or inflate the rafts or find the navigation or know where to stop or really know a single darn thing about it, but the guides guided us through this, right? Now, if the guides had carried us through or just put us on the motor raft and powered through, it would have been a different experience. So me guiding a client is going to be far more impactful. The other thing, Micah, that your line of questioning does is that it buys me time to think.
Yes.
Right. So the client says, hey, I'm going to sell my house. How much will my tax bill be? I don't know that number off the top of my head. Or if I do, it's probably the wrong number. Oh, well, tell me a little bit more. Remind me again how much you paid for the house. Remind me how much you're going to plan on selling it for. Remind me how long you've lived there. That's giving my brain time. I'm guiding them, which is a win. And it's giving my brain time to put these pieces together. Okay, probably the tax bill is going to be in the range of X to Y.
Yep.
But we can go deeper on those numbers.
And always go higher.
Yes. Oh, boy.
And one of the things that I love to do as well when I'm talking to clients is give them credit for information they may have given me in advance, especially if they're surprising me with a question, right? They didn't send it in advance. I don't know. Hey, Micah, I was just thinking about it today. I want to sell my rental property. What do I think the taxes are? Okay, I hadn't looked at that, right? And so I might ask the question, hey, forgive me. I know you've told me this before, but when did you buy the rental property, right? So then that way I get a little bit of grace from the client. They can help remind me of these facts, but they're not like, why the heck don't you know? It's just like, I know you told me that. Let me just give you credit for that.
I'm also not drilling them with questions. Micah, when did you buy that thing? I don't remember when I bought it. How much did you pay for it? What was your depreciation schedule? How many upgrades you got? Hey, remind me, and remind me, have you done any big improvements on it? And remind me, how much you think you're going to sell it for, just if you had to put a guess to it, right? So I'm asking so many probing questions without it becoming an interrogation.
Yeah, and it gives the client some a good space that they can also give ish answers, right? Ooh, boy, I think it was like 97, maybe it was 2000. Okay, great. Let's just take the more conservative number, right? And we can kind of walk through that.
Another thing I'm doing on that, this recently came up with a client. They had bought their house 40 years ago. I think it just Zillowed for like $1.6 million, and she and her husband had paid $14,000 for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but I'm always looking, isn't that amazing? $14,000. And her husband had since passed when we were having this discussion. And I said, boy, we'll call them, Bob and Sue, because that's what we always say. Sue, that's amazing that you and your husband bought that for $14,000. That was probably all the money in the world back then, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. I didn't even know how we'd ever pay that off. Can you believe that it's 1.6? I can't even believe it. Matthew, it doesn't even make sense to me. So I'm helping them, guide them through that. I'm congratulating them whenever I can. Or if it was the opposite, like, I'm really going to lose money. Boy, I hate when that happens. Good thing you've done so well in these other areas. So my guide, it is an emotional guiding as much as it is a numbers guide.
Yeah, I had a client that was going to lose a ton of money on real estate, but it only goes up in value. But anyways, so they're going to lose a bunch of money on real estate, right? And they're kind of beating themselves up about it. I said, hey, yes, I'm totally with you. I hate it when I lose money. Just period. It sucks. Here's the positive spin I'm going to put on it. Now, I addressed
loss
that
harvesting.
No, actually, it wasn't it. I addressed that it was a positive spin, right? Because I don't want them to say, well, positive politics. So just call it what it is. Hey, this is a positive spin. You have done such a great job in all these other areas of your life. This doesn't affect your retirement.
That's right. Congratulations that your diversification is so good.
Right.
Congratulations you didn't bet everything on this, right?
Yep.
Now you'll be able to get this head. It wouldn't be great to have this headache off of your mind, right? To lick our wounds and move on.
So, all right. So go back. I know we're getting a little long on time. So thank you for the patience with our listeners. So we're going to go through the retirement income timeline.
Please.
Then we're going to go potentially through investments. I always want to touch on estate planning before I get to my wrap up. Why? Because most people completely miss this, especially advisors. And I know this because I get to look at a lot of the stuff you guys do, which is great, right? But I want to call spade a spade. We don't do a good enough job in our industry doing estate planning because it's like, oh, I'm not an attorney. Guess what? You're not a tax accountant either, but we still give tax advice. So same thing with estate planning. We got to be able to help them do this. So I want to touch on those things. Now, this whole time, Jarvis, and I know you do the same thing, while I'm chatting with a client, I'm going through those 3 Ps. Are they personable? Are they productive? Are they going to be profitable, right? And they got to meet these 3 Ps. And that personal one is always what it starts off with. Am I going to be excited and happy to have a conversation with this client? I was talking to an advisor this last week, and we were chatting about this before. And one of the things that his comment had made, and it had come up twice, and then it really kind of stuck with me, is that they get yelled at
That's right.
by some of the clients. And we're going to have another conversation in our mastermind about this, but I'm like, what do you mean your clients yell at you, right? Are you just being a little sissy lala and your clients are excitable because you called them with some bad news, right? Because I don't really consider that being yelled at.
No.
Or are they really yelling at you is so you have failed in selecting the right clients.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. So there's definitely a lot of pieces there, but I love to have that filter throughout, right? Our first filter is how do I deliver massive value to this person, right? How do I transform their life?
Yes.
And then I'm watching personal, profitable, productive, right? How could this be an ongoing relationship or not, as the case may be?
Or not. All right. So really, really important. And then there's 2 decisions that come out of that. Do I want to ask them to become a client? If they meet the 3 Ps, I always ask them to become a client. I'm not worried about what they're going to say. Right now, this also comes from a very aspect of abundance. But if they would be a good client, and I think I like them, I can improve their life and make it better, and they're going to be profitable, right? And it's going to make sense for them to hire us. I'm going to ask them to hire us because we're going to do a great job. If they can't, then we're going to move right into the graduation. It doesn't make sense for them to hire me. My fees would be detrimental to their financial success, and they should get help elsewhere.
Yeah, and this took me a long time to learn. The more I want or need it, we call that commission breath, the less likely they are to say yes. So while you might be thinking, hey, Matt and Micah, you guys have these great practices, blah, blah, blah. It's easy for you to say that you don't care if the deal works or not. But when I was able to adopt that abundance mindset and detach myself from the result that I can't control, my closing rate went up dramatically. The people I was able to help went up dramatically, right? So I can say, hey, listen, maybe it makes sense to work with us and maybe it doesn't make sense to work with us. That's a decision for you to make.
Yep.
Right. And I have to just leave it there and be at peace with that, knowing that if I'm not at peace with that, I'm killing the deal.
And going into it again with my goal is to change their life.
That's right.
Hire me or not, that is the goal of the meeting.
Awesome.
Right. Action items out of this podcast. I know it's a little longer, so thank you guys for your patience. Action items out of this. I'm going to say number 1, role play. And I know you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Neither do we. But this is really, really important. I'm going to say 2 things you got to role play. Number 1 is the meeting outline. Getting those questions from a client, how do you weave them into the agenda throughout the day? And don't think it's such a minor detail, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does, right? The second thing I would say to go role play is what are the main key objections that you fear?
That you fear, yes. I'm with you 100%. And a great way to role play this, it's kind of an easy way out, but it's very effective, is to find an advisor that you respect who has the success that you want to have and just say, hey, Micah, how do you deal with the fee objection? If somebody says, how can you possibly be charging 1.75? How do you handle that? That is a really productive role play. The last thing, by the way, I want to do is go to an advisor who sucks and hypothesize with them about how you would handle this and why it's not fair that some people charge more than others.
Correct. And don't go to your spouse to role play. Yeah. Another pro tip there.
That's a different discussion.
Yes. So those are the really big things. And always go into a meeting prepared with your agenda, right? What's your agenda? How are you going to go through this? What are you going to do? The client's agenda is always more important, but you should be prepared for that meeting. Yeah.
And then I guess last action item for more great insights on that. There's a great book, Delivering Massive Value by yours truly, bonus edition. So you can go ahead and check that out. Go to our website, theperfectra.com/book. If you already have the book in any version, theperfectra.com/book bonus, you can get access to all the bonus material. Otherwise, I guess you can buy it on Amazon and we'll take that money too, but you can get a copy from our website.
Awesome. Jarvis, great to have you in person. Excited about training we have coming up. And to our listeners, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.